Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. We don't serve delivery people during rush hour. Those words hung in the air as the entire food court seemed to pause. The young man in the worn delivery jacket froze, handful of crumpled bills still extended across the counter. His tired eyes widened with humiliation as dozens of strangers turned to watch. The food court buzzed with the midday rush. Business people clutching phones, teenagers with shopping bags, families corralling children between tables. The delivery driver had been standing in line for 20 minutes, checking his watch repeatedly, counting coins in his palm. When he finally reached the counter, the cashier's smile vanished, replaced by a dismissive glance at his uniform. Her voice had been deliberately loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Someone snickered. Someone else looked away uncomfortably. The driver's shoulders slumped as he began to step back from the counter. Hunger and exhaustion etched across his face. He'd been delivering other people's lunches since dawn, and now couldn't even buy his own. What no one noticed was the man in the black jacket several spots back in line, watching intently as the scene unfolded, a familiar face partially hidden beneath a baseball cap, his expression shifting from observation to quiet resolve. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. The delivery driver, Miguel, according to his faded name tag, shoved the bills back into his pocket with trembling hands. 8 hours on his bike through midday traffic, 63 deliveries completed, and this was his first chance to eat. The lunch rush crowd pretended to return to their conversations, but their eyes kept darting back to the scene. The cashier's name badge read Vanessa, and she wore her authority like expensive perfume, hand on hip, one eyebrow raised in challenge. Company policy, she added loudly, though no such policy existed. You people block the lines when we're busy. Her gaze moved past Miguel as if he'd already disappeared, calling, "Next customer, please." Miguel stood frozen, caught between hunger and humiliation as the businessman behind him stepped forward, pointedly avoiding eye contact. 3 delivery apps buzzed simultaneously in Miguel's pocket. More orders waiting, more hungry people who would never see him as anything but a transaction. His stomach growled audibly as he turned away, the sound a small betrayal in the crowded space. A teenage girl at a nearby table lifted her phone, angling it to capture Miguel's retreat. Her friend whispered something and they both giggled. The food court had become an impromptu theater, Miguel the unwilling performer in some cruel spectacle. Vanessa's triumph was small but complete. The invisible line between those who serve and those who are served clearly drawn and enforced. The businessman now at the counter ordered a premium meal combo without looking up from his phone, the transaction smooth and respectful. "Sir, your total is $15.87, Vanessa said sweetly, her customer service voice restored. The contrast was deliberate, performative. Miguel paused by the condiment station, unsure where to go next. He had 40 minutes before his next delivery window closed, not enough time to find food elsewhere in the massive mall. His phone kept vibrating. 2 college students at a table whispered and pointed, recognizing something happening beyond the ordinary humiliation of service workers. The man in the baseball cap had moved up in line, now just 2 people away from the counter. His face remained downturned, but his attention never left the scene unfolding before him. Miguel's phone buzzed again. Another order, another deadline, another hungry stranger who would judge him solely on speed. He squared his shoulders, dignity reassembling itself in fragments. This wasn't the first time invisibility had been his assigned role. He'd been a ghost in this city for 3 years, moving through spaces without belonging to them, delivering comfort he couldn't afford to people who looked through him. Today was simply a louder reminder of his place. "Hey, aren't you—" someone started to say. Not to Miguel, but to the man in the cap, now only one person away from the counter. The man gave a small, deflecting smile, his focus still on the delivery driver, now moving dejectedly toward the exit. There was something in his posture, a controlled awareness, a deliberate patience. Vanessa continued her performance of selective courtesy, unaware that her small display of power had caught the attention of someone whose fame rested partly on how he treated those society deemed invisible. The man removed his cap, revealing a face millions would recognize instantly, just as Miguel pushed open the door to leave. Keanu Reeves stepped up to the counter, eyes steady on Vanessa's suddenly faltering smile. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. Recognition rippled through the food court like a stone dropped in still water. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Phones rose in unison. Vanessa's practiced customer service smile calcified as realization dawned. The Keanu Reeves, not someone who merely looked like him, stood before her, his expression calm but resolute. Her fingers hovered over the register, suddenly unsure. "Hi," Keanu said, his voice carrying just enough for nearby tables to hear. "I'd like to order something." He paused, glancing toward the door where Miguel had just exited. "Actually, 2 orders." Of course," Vanessa stammered, her earlier authority evaporating. "Anything you'd like, Mr. Reeves." The transformation was immediate, from imperious gatekeeper to eager servant in the space of a heartbeat. Around them, whispers crescendoed as phones recorded every moment. The businessman who had taken Miguel's place in line was now recording too, his earlier indifference replaced by celebrity excitement. "Before I order," Keanu continued, his voice still measured, "I'm curious about something." His eyes moved briefly to her name tag. "Vanessa, you mentioned a policy about delivery drivers." The question hung in the air, giving her ample room to explain or correct herself. The small kingdom she had ruled minutes ago suddenly felt precarious. Vanessa's smile flickered, her eyes darting to her manager who had emerged from the back, alerted by the commotion. That's not exactly—" Vanessa began, words failing as her fabricated policy dissolved under scrutiny. Her manager approached rapidly, recognition widening his eyes as he registered their famous customer. "Is there a problem here?" the manager asked, professional smile firmly in place. "Not a problem," Keanu replied, his tone still conversational. "I was just asking about your policy regarding serving delivery drivers during busy hours." He gestured toward the door. The young man who was just turned away seemed pretty hungry. The manager's confusion was genuine. "Turned away? We don't have any such policy." His gaze shifted to Vanessa, whose face had drained of color. The audience of diners was fully engaged now, the drama better than anything on their phones. Several people near the door were already trying to flag down Miguel in the corridor outside. "Must have been a misunderstanding," Keanu suggested, offering an exit that wouldn't require a public admission of wrongdoing. His kindness extended even to Vanessa, though his eyes communicated that he understood exactly what had happened. "Maybe someone could find him. I'd like to buy his lunch." The manager nodded vigorously. "Of course, Mr. Reeves. Right away." He gestured to another employee who hurried toward the exit. Vanessa stood motionless, trapped between her previous performance and her current reality. The whispers around them had become a steady buzz of commentary, judgment shifting like weather. Miguel returned reluctantly, confusion evident as he was ushered back by the employee who'd found him checking his delivery app in the hallway. The food court had transformed in his brief absence, dozens of phones now pointed in his direction, the hushed anticipation of spectators waiting for the next act. When he saw Keanu standing at the counter, recognition flashed across his tired face, followed immediately by uncertainty. Famous people weren't part of his daily reality. "Found him!" the employee announced unnecessarily, guiding Miguel forward. The crowd parted like water, creating a path to the counter. Miguel approached cautiously, hyper-aware of the attention. His delivery bag hung awkwardly at his side, his uniform suddenly feeling more like a costume in this unexpected spotlight. "Hey, man," Keanu greeted him with a warm smile and extended hand. "Miguel, right?" He nodded toward the name tag. "I'm Keanu." "I know who you are," Miguel replied quietly, accepting the handshake. His shoulders remained tense, waiting for the punchline, the hidden camera, the revelation that this, too, was some elaborate form of public humiliation. The food court held its collective breath. "I heard there might have been some confusion about whether you could order lunch," Keanu continued, his tone casual but caring enough to be heard by those nearby. "I thought maybe we could eat together if you have time." The invitation was offered simply, one person to another, as if they were the only two people in the crowded space. The contrast with how Miguel had been treated minutes earlier couldn't have been more stark. Vanessa stared at her register, unable to meet either man's eyes. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below, and let's talk. The manager frantically cleared a table in the center of the food court, wiping it down personally while directing employees to bring the best of everything we offer. The audience had grown, people from neighboring restaurants drifting over, the whispered chorus of "It's Keanu Reeves" spreading through the mall. Miguel stood uncertainly beside the famous actor, self-consciousness radiating from him like heat. "You really don't have to do this," Miguel said quietly. "I'm used to it." Keanu's expression shifted subtly, a flicker of genuine sadness crossing his features. "That's exactly why I should," he replied, just as quietly. Then louder to the manager, "We'll order at the counter like everyone else." The correction was gentle but firm. Special treatment wasn't the point, equal treatment was. They approached the counter together, where Vanessa now stood rigid with mortification. The teenager who had filmed Miguel's humiliation earlier had edged closer, her phone still recording. Beside her, her friend whispered urgently, "Delete that video." Social calculus was being frantically recalculated throughout the food court. "What would you recommend?" Keanu asked Miguel, ignoring the spectacle around them. "You must deliver from this place all the time." Miguel hesitated, then pointed to a combo meal on the board. "The number 4 is decent. Good value." The pragmatic assessment of someone who counted every dollar. Keanu nodded and turned to Vanessa. "2 number 4s, please," Keanu said to Vanessa. His tone remained courteous despite knowing exactly what she had done. Her hands trembled slightly as she entered the order, the power dynamic completely inverted. "That's $25.74, she said, voice barely audible. Keanu handed over his card, then turned to the growing crowd while waiting for the transaction. "Might want to give us a little space, yeah?" he suggested mildly. There was no force behind the words, just a gentle reminder of human dignity. Surprisingly, it worked. People stepped back, lowered their phones, some looking embarrassed at their own behavior. The spell of celebrity gawking wasn't completely broken, but it cracked enough to let humanity seep through. As they waited for their food, Miguel's phone buzzed again. He checked it reflexively, then winced. "I'm sorry. I have deliveries waiting. I'm already behind schedule." "Will you get in trouble?" Keanu asked. Miguel shrugged. My ratings will drop. Enough bad ratings, and he didn't need to finish. Gig workers lived and died by their ratings, their livelihoods dependent on a fragile digital reputation. Keanu nodded, understanding the precarious reality. He pulled out his own phone. Mind if I take a picture with you? Might help explain the delay to your customers? Miguel looked stunned. You want a picture with me? If that's okay, Keanu replied as if requesting a favor rather than offering one. A simple inversion that restored Miguel's agency in a situation where he'd had none. The selfie took seconds. Keanu with his arm casually around Miguel's shoulders, both holding up their food bags. A simple image that would circulate online within minutes. Miguel sent it immediately to his waiting customers with a brief explanation. Responses pinged back almost instantly. Disbelief transformed to excitement. Late deliveries suddenly acceptable. The digital currency of celebrity had momentarily freed him from the tyranny of ratings. They sat at a small table, the crowd maintaining a respectful distance that would have been unimaginable 10 minutes earlier. Vanessa remained at her register, mechanically serving customers, her earlier performance of superiority impossible to recapture. The manager hovered nearby, oscillating between wanting to apologize and wanting to ask for his own photo with Keanu. Been delivering long? Keanu asked, unwrapping a sandwich. 3 years, Miguel replied, still seeming stunned by the turn of events. Trying to save for college. He took a bite, hunger overcoming his self-consciousness. It's not usually this eventful. Keanu smiled. I worked service jobs before acting. People don't always see you. They see the uniform, Miguel agreed, relaxing slightly. Not the person. It costs nothing to be kind, Keanu said, these words carrying just enough for nearby tables to hear. Not a lecture, not a performance, but a simple truth offered conversationally. Everyone's fighting some kind of battle we know nothing about. The words landed in the food court like gentle rain, seeping into conversations at surrounding tables. Phones were slowly lowered as the spectacle transformed into something more meaningful. The teenager who had filmed Miguel earlier was now watching thoughtfully, her phone dark in her hand, something shifting in her expression. It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. "20 minutes later, Miguel checked his watch and began gathering his things. His brief lunch with Keanu had been surprisingly normal. 2 people talking about motorcycles, Miguel's dream purchase, movies, and the highs and lows of navigating Los Angeles traffic. The celebrity factor had gradually faded, leaving just a human connection across differences in status and circumstance. I really need to get back to deliveries, Miguel said, genuine regret in his voice. Thank you for... He gestured vaguely, encompassing everything that had happened. Just lunch between fellow workers. Keanu replied with a smile, standing to shake Miguel's hand again. The handshake was captured by several still-recording phones, but the mood had shifted from celebrity chasing to witnessing something authentic. As Miguel prepared to leave, the teenager who had filmed his humiliation approached hesitantly. Excuse me, she said, addressing Miguel rather than Keanu. Her friend hung back, clearly mortified. I wanted to say I'm sorry for recording before. I deleted it. She held up her phone as if offering proof. It wasn't cool. Miguel seemed surprised by the apology, nodding awkwardly before turning to go. Keanu gave the girl a small smile of acknowledgement, not praise for doing the bare minimum, but recognition of growth. She returned to her friend, both speaking in hushed, serious tones. A small ripple of awareness had spread through their corner of the world. The manager finally gathered his courage, approaching Keanu with an awkward cough. Mr. Reeves, I want to personally apologize for any misunderstanding. I've spoken with Vanessa about our customer service standards. Keanu nodded, neither accepting nor rejecting the carefully worded non-apology. Maybe consider offering delivery workers a discount, he suggested mildly. They bring a lot of business to places like this. Again, not a command from celebrity heights, but a practical suggestion rooted in mutual benefit. The manager nodded vigorously, already calculating the PR value. Nearby, Vanessa was speaking with another employee, her earlier bravado replaced by visible distress. The power she had wielded so carelessly had been revealed as both temporary and toxic. The lesson hadn't come from a public scolding, but from witnessing an alternative way of wielding influence, with kindness rather than cruelty. As Keanu prepared to leave, several people approached for photos or autographs. He obliged with his characteristic patience, but something had changed in the crowd's behavior. They waited their turn, thanked him sincerely, several mentioning they had learned something today. The viral moment was already spreading beyond the food court, but its meaning had evolved from celebrity sighting to something more substantial. The businessman who had ignored Miguel earlier watched from his table, phone still in hand but no longer recording. His expression was thoughtful, perhaps reconsidering his own daily interactions with those deemed invisible by virtue of their service roles. Outside the mall, Miguel balanced his delivery bag as he unlocked his bicycle. His phone pinged with new notifications, the selfie with Keanu already generating hundreds of responses. For a moment, he was visible to the digital world in a way he'd never been before. Yet tomorrow, he would still be a delivery driver, still navigating the complex social hierarchies that determined who was seen and who remained invisible. What had changed wasn't his circumstance, but his understanding of dignity, that it couldn't be taken without his permission, that worth wasn't determined by uniform or occupation. He had been seen, truly seen, by someone whose own fame never seemed to distort his view of others' humanity. Inside, Keanu declined the manager's offer of free meals anytime you're in the area, thanking him politely before heading toward the exit. The food court had settled back into its rhythm, but with subtle differences. A woman said, "Thank you," to the cleaner wiping a nearby table. A man held the door for a delivery driver entering with a stack of pizzas. Small recognitions of shared humanity rippling outward. Vanessa remained at her register, chastened but not broken. The lesson she'd received wasn't about celebrity power, but about the choice each person makes daily, to diminish others or to honor their dignity. As the automatic doors closed behind Keanu, the story was already spreading across social media, transforming with each share. Not just Keanu spotted at mall, but Keanu shows what respect looks like. A small moment of justice that reminded everyone. How we treat the least powerful among us reveals everything about who we truly are. Wow, what a story. If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think.